School District 308 Board of Education meeting. Can I get a roll call?
Mrs. Doyle?
Present.
Mr. Gatewood?
Present.
Mrs. Johnson?
Present.
Mrs. Kroner?
Present.
Dr. Marino?
Present.
Mrs. Simulton?
Present.
Mrs. Swanson?
Present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're now going to take public comment. On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to thank the public for attending tonight's meeting. We value the feedback we receive from our residents and encourage everyone to take an active interest in their public school system. Residents interested in speaking to the board this evening are asked to have completed a comment card and presented it to the secretary to the board. When the secretary calls your name, I ask that you come to the microphone, state your name for the public record, and provide your feedback. In order to hear from as many community members as possible, comments have been limited to 3 minutes per person and a total time of 45 minutes. Comments received, I apologize, we're going to, since so many of you joined us tonight, we are going to prioritize those of you who are in person tonight, although everyone will be responded to. There is no discussion of personal matters or responses to questions are permitted. The board does not participate in discussion during public comment. Follow-up to your questions or concerns will be addressed by administration through the contact information provided on the comment card. Thank you.
Denise Gutierrez? Thomas Naninga?
Hello, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Tom Naningay, and I am the father of 2 children currently enrolled in SD308. I just have a couple of concerns that I would like to comment on as it relates to the district's potential mask policy for this fall. I support our parental rights to make decisions that are in the best interest of our children regarding facial masking, viral testing, health records, and/or the use of COVID-19 vaccines. I strongly oppose any mask policy that would require the mandating of masks wearing by anybody, whether they are vaccinated or not. I have read many studies in the last 6 months that have proven to me that long-term mask usage is unhealthy for our children. Here are just 3 of the conclusions that I have found in my research. Testing shows that masks become contaminated with bacteria, parasites, and fungi, including dangerous pneumonia-causing bacteria. Inhaling graphene, which is the substance used to coat masks, was identified as a potential for early lung toxicity in rats. And per a research letter that was just published on June 20th of this year in the Journal of the American Medical Association, carbon dioxide levels were measured in children and found to be 4 times the OSHA permissible limit of CO2 exposure in just 9 minutes. The youngest children had the highest CO2 values. Those are just some of the medical reasons for me to conclude that wearing masks are detrimental to our children. Then throw in the psychological factors such as the well-being of children that are highly dependent on emotional connections with their classmates and teachers. Add to that, masks can have a negative effect on speech and language development in our children. We need a policy that gives parents a choice to have their children wear masks or not to wear masks. If vaccinated, I asked why the unvaccinated kids are being asked to wear masks. I thought the vaccine was supposed to protect us. There is just no science that shows that it's that effective, while there is overwhelming evidence of children wearing masks poses a much greater risk to their health. Our school district does have the ability to make mask wearing optional. I request you, as our board, respect the guidance from the CDC, ISBE, and IDPH does not equate to a mandate. Under Title 23 of the Administrative Code, the Illinois State Board of Education is not in a position to force, reward, or threaten any school district or local board of education regarding said agency guidance. The same rule applies to ISBE on any stipulated guidance. The word strongly encourage that is used in the most recent guidance doesn't even mean a mandate. I ask, have you seen the rest of Oswego and the surrounding communities? There are no masks anywhere. Go to Walmart, no mandate. Restaurant, no mandate. As I walked into this building, no mandate anymore. But our district could vote to keep the mandate in place, I ask, but many school districts, school boards, and school districts have been voting to make masks optional. 3 more Illinois school districts just announced their masks encouraged but not mandated policy as of late this afternoon. I hope and pray you do the same. As for the choice of parents to vaccinate or not vaccinate our children is just that, parental choice.
For interrupting. The 3 minutes is up. If you just.
I'm on my last sentence. I strongly oppose any attempts to segregate our children, whether by forcing unvaccinated children to wear masks, sit in different areas from other children, or apply quarantine rules in a different manner. I hope and pray that we take a look at choice for our children. Thank you.
Jason Hudson.
The next person has
Jason
been called.
Hudson.
Hello, good evening. My name is Jason Hudson, and I'm a community member here in Oswego. Thank you for letting me speak and giving me the opportunity to be heard this evening. My first order of business is to thank Carrie, and I apologize if I mispronounce her name, Sensbillen, for her fantastic work regarding the community's FOIA requests. She's done it in an expeditious time frame, and she's done an excellent job in ascertaining and adhering to the laws. Some of the critics claim that FOIA requests go into great detail about it costing us money, the district money, taking out efforts towards their educating their children. Recent information discovered with the FOIA requests hope to dispel the notion of this, and it's going to show that certain activities of employees of the district are costing them more money actually than the actual FOIA requests. In the past 4 years, there have been over 1 million, let me repeat that again, 1 million emails containing the word Trump or Biden in employees' emails. Now, I recognize, as should the board and the district members, some of the emails are within district guidelines, right? They have to use them for curriculum purposes, and they have to use them for any kind of student, student committees. However, there were several that are abusing and violating the district policy, such talking politics in the workplace. Emails are from both sides of the political spectrum, and they range from simple encouragement emails to downright vulgar and profane language in the emails. There have been a couple occasions where district employees are using district resources to promote non-district rallies. This has to end. There's no place for politics or agendas in our school district amongst their employees. I really wonder what a history search would do on some of these employees' emails or some of their computers and in some of their text messages. Recently there was an event that had district employees' emails that promoted and put the word out about the unfortunate incident that happened at Portillo's recently, right? And we all didn't want that to happen. I don't think anybody did. But it was put out on district email, and I applaud the people for going to that and voicing their opinion, just like we are here today, right? I think that was fantastic. But at that meeting, there was certain disrespect to some of the Oswego Village board members, and there was actually violence that was promoted at that meeting. So we had teachers and students that attended that meeting, and they were subject to that. And I think that's the wrong message that we need to be sending to our students, especially coming from a district email. It opens you guys up to lawsuits, and you don't need that. And lastly, because I only got 7 seconds left on the shot clock here, I want to leave you with this. There's going to be more FOIA requests. I implore the district's human resource policy or human resource people to take complaints against these district employees very seriously. And I also hope that we can eliminate inappropriate and misuse of district emails on taxpayer dime at our students' expense during working hours or non-working hours. You know, we need to keep politics and agendas out of the workplace and have a laser beam focused solely on educating our students who, as we all know, are behind due to COVID in learning. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Crystal Casper.
Can I come to this one?
Yeah.
Hello. While I recognize the COVID vaccine is not mandated to return to in-person learning, I'm very concerned about the need to mask unvaccinated children. The science proves children don't need masks, and if people are vaccinated, we should not worry who is and who isn't. Every person has the right to choose what is best for themselves, and it's not my business. It's time to do what's best for our children, and that's going back to school unmasked and with no restrictions. The Illinois State Board of Education, the school superintendents, school boards, teachers, and staff are not medical professionals and have no lawful or legal authority to require any individual or student to wear a mask to prevent illness. The Illinois Department of Health does not have the lawful or legal authority to mandate, require, or force any individual to wear a mask to prevent illness. The CDC is an advisory agency to the executive branch of the U.S. government. It only advises and possesses no rulemaking authority federally or within the 50 U.S. states. The COVID vaccine is experimental, it's not FDA approved, and it's only authorized for use for emergency use. So it's not FDA approved. Vaccination cards issued by local healthcare personnel as the result of being vaccinated are not lawfully mandated and are not legal documents and have no legal or authoritative value. A citizen's individual medical choice to refuse to wear a facial covering, to refuse an experimental and untested medical treatment by vaccine, or a parent or guardian's choice to exercise the same for a minor child is a protected individual medical and conscious choice and right, and is protected by Illinois law and should not be violated or infringed on. Every single thing that's done in the public school system has to have parental consent, whether it's giving some kid a Tylenol because they have a headache, or permission to go on a field trip or watch a certain movie. And now we're telling parents they don't have a choice when they have to mask their child, and that's just not right. Give the power back to the parents. Let them choose what they feel is right for their own child. Please make masks optional for the return to learning in the fall. Thank you.
Dominic Castillo. Dominic Castillo.
I am here to speak on behalf of we the parents throughout the district to oppose masking and vaxxing for both students and staff as a requirement for in-person learning. As we enter the third school year impacted by COVID, it is now time for the board to put common sense and reason before fear and panic. Over the last 18 months, the message has been the virtue of wearing the mask. Not for your own protection, but for the health and safety of others. So people masked up. However, beyond the virtue, what about efficiency? Inconsistencies abound in what, how, where, when masks are being applied. Let's be honest, none of this has been consistent, making the safety argument questionable at best. Photos of students as well as teachers in the schools this summer blow that narrative to pieces. This simply just doesn't make sense anymore. There's no science with the inconsistent masking. What goes on my child's body is my choice. The vaccine surplus ensures availability for all SD308 staff comfortable receiving them. No more excuses. However, our students range in age from early childhood to senior in high school, weighing the risk of an emergency use vaccine on their developing bodies that aren't nearly as vulnerable to severe complications from COVID should be left to the parents. What goes in my child's body is my choice. Public schools should be an unbiased and neutral environment for teachers and students. Mandates and politicized policies open the door for a toxic learning environment. Teachers, I worry for you too and how you will be treated. Many of you have been too afraid to voice your concerns. I am here to be your voice tonight. We stand with all teachers who feel they cannot speak up due to the virtue signaling going on. As a pro-student and parent choice group, we, the parents of Oswego 308, do not co-parent with the state government. Since the start of this pandemic, we have spent countless hours advocating for return to in-person instruction and improved virtual experiences for remote learners. Board members, you were elected to represent all of us, not half of us. All of us and our students. The choice is the next step forward into normalcy. We need choices. Thank you.
Zoe Werman. Zoe Werman.
Can you say the name again, please?
She's coming.
Hi, I'm Zoe Werman, and I'm a senior at OHS, and I want to speak on the student perspective. I came to this meeting not expecting to speak, but decided that this topic was too important to ignore. Face masks need to be required at school. I can still remember when the pandemic started, and I saw teens wearing masks in the hallways in an attempt to stay safe. That was then, when the case numbers were lower, but this is now. Now we have to worry about the students who have immunocompromised family members and who are immunocompromised themselves. We shouldn't put that burden on young children and teens. We shouldn't let them worry if they are the ones to bring home the deadly virus. We shouldn't leave parents to tell their elementary students about what the Delta variant, which is sickening young children across the nation. Even if those who choose to wear masks, people will still be scared. Masks are the most effective when everybody wears them. They are the universal protector for all of us. Vaccinated or not, we have new variants to worry about now. I think I can speak for every student when I say I want to go back to how things were. I want to see my friends, I want to see my teachers, I want to have a normal senior year. However, the only safe way we can return to cheering on our football team is by wearing masks. We can't guarantee that everybody will be vaccinated, but we can protect our community from any new variants to come and hopefully have a potentially normal school year. A school year where we don't have to shut down from an outbreak, a school year where students can resume sports and clubs, and a school year that keeps our community safe. I know for a fact I'm not the only student with this viewpoint. I know I'm not the only student who wants to return to a sense of normalcy, but who also doesn't want to worry about COVID-19. So please, I urge you to ask the students rather than the parents what they want and consider, will we feel safe? We may be minors, but we still deserve a say.
Kyle C.
Hello, public servants. I am 18 and here to tell you, unmask the children. I was a high school student, and I can tell you firsthand that your students do not wear masks outside school. All restaurants and public buildings are no longer requiring masks, and no one wears masks with their friends. Your continued mask mandates into perpetuity are useless, completely and utterly useless. If you want the vaccine, by all means, get the vaccine. And if you don't want it, that means you don't want it. If you are a kid 14 to 18 who wants the vaccines, then you can get it. And parents of kids under 12 can get it too. Kids under 12 are not dying of COVID in significant enough numbers to justify forcing them to wear a mask, plain and simple. If parents want their kids masks, fine, but that should not force other kids to have to wear them as well. We are free in America, and we must be free to wear. And we must be free to wear whatever the hell we want to on our own damn face. It is tyrants who force people to comply, and we will not let the school board force us or our kids to wear this piece of crap. Enough bullshit. Unmask the children. And on to the
Please watch your language. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm sorry. Now, on to the sex education that is being considered in Springfield. It is gross and disgusting that anyone in this state believes that elementary school children need to be seeing pornographic materials. And if any teacher shows any child pornographic materials, the police will be involved. Thank you.
Brad. Brad.
Thanks to you all. I didn't expect to speak, and to be honest with you, I hate being here, even though I've been here twice in the last year. I don't have any dislike or hate for any of you. I don't really know any of you except Dr. Sparlin, who I occasionally email in a fit of rage. I don't know anybody here, and I don't know the local politics of all this. I don't. I care about one thing, and that's my 6-year-old daughter. I don't want her growing up wearing a mask the rest of her life. People are entitled to their own opinions. They're not entitled to their own facts, and the facts are clear. Masks don't work, period. I was quiet when you misspoke. COVID does not impact children. You want to know a couple things that are more likely to kill a child than COVID? Riding a bike. And yes, the flu, despite how many times we hear it's not, it's actually more deadly than COVID for children. So it's my understanding that you guys can vote this down tonight, that you don't have to pass any type of guidance that the state of Illinois gives. And I appreciate your perspectives, but I ask you with all my heart not to force children to wear masks and not to make many of us make very difficult decisions about where to raise our children. So the question I'd leave you with, there's a lot of questions of, why wouldn't we have children wear masks? Why would we? What is the reason? Can anybody explain to me what the reason we would force them to wear masks are? There's literally no risk, and it's terrible for them. I've raised a daughter. I know it's terrible for her. I've seen her have bouts of anxiety last year because she couldn't see her or talk to her friends. And now, I have to get used to her trying to communicate with other 6-year-olds who don't even have developed language skills, trying to communicate non-verbally and, just express a smile to one another. So I just ask kindly to all of you that you please vote against this guidance tonight.
Inga.
Hi, my name is Inga Danos, and I'm here to speak in support of parents-students' choice rather than discrete mandates regarding masks. Since the beginning of the pandemic, there has been liability concerns. What if a staff or student fell ill with COVID? What if lunchtime became a super spreader event? What if, God forbid, someone died? Is the district responsible? What if the district gets sued? What ifs? After a year and a half, the data indicates COVID does not spread to schools, especially for K-8 kids. While the advertised effects of quarantine measures, including masks on kids' mental health, is well documented, in fact, many neighboring districts have followed the science and lifted the mask requirements. I'm also here to remind you the oath you all took when became a school board members. It says, I do solemnly affirm that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of a member of the Board of Education of Oswego Unit School District 308 in accordance with Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of my ability. It says nothing of a government executive orders. It says nothing of following CDC guidelines or ISBE guidelines. Per Illinois School Code 5 ILCS 5-52-3.25, ISBE can't withhold funding to public schools contingent upon masking. There are no laws in place to stop the school board from making masks optional. Public health crises are nothing new. The measles, mumps, chickenpox, smallpox, lice, Hong Kong flu, H1N1, etc. Schools did not close. What is novel this time is the unrealistic zero transmission model for a virus with a 98.9 survival rate. Life is returning to normal. As you consider your vote, look around at all the things that are going on. Fairs, public pools are open, games are being played. Tonight, I'm asking you to relinquish control back to the families of School District 308 and allow us to make the private, personal health choices that are right for our individual families. Vote against the mask mandates. Thank you for your time.
Kevin DeBolt. Kevin DeBolt. Not sure I said that last name right. Anybody here named Kevin? Last name starts with a D. Raji P.
Hi, I'm Raj Pillai. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in front of you. I'm actually not in this district. My children are not in this district. I'm actually from the neighboring district of Plainfield, 202. The reason I'm here is I want to speak to you and implore you similarly to how some of the others have. However, here's what I want to start off saying is that you guys as a school board are legally liable. I mean, the science is one thing, but you're going to be liable because there was a bill that just went through the House and it didn't pass. It was called HB or House Bill 2789. It was basically trying to take authority away from the school boards and give it to the ISBE in order to mandate masks, and it was under the threat of schools losing funding. And this was all under an emergency. The bill did not pass, which means that this bill went through the House because school boards already have the authority to mandate or not mandate masks. Otherwise, the bill would not have gone through, and the bill didn't pass. So the fact of the matter is, you guys do have the authority to make masks optional. And based on the inconsistency that's out there of what the Illinois Department of Health or the IDPH has done, basically what's happening right now is we're in phase 5. Nobody is wearing masks. It's essentially optional in every single public or private establishment, yet we're not going to do it in schools. It is inconsistent. It is opening you up to lawsuits, and I've got thousands of parents behind me. We have many different groups. Now we're combining those groups, and you are going to be under the threat of lawsuits. And I want you to protect yourself, stand with the community, and if you do not, there's going to be higher risk to you as school board members because you have to open your mouth and say that you stand with the community. And like someone said, not half of the community, all of the community. And based on those inconsistencies that I mentioned, I believe that it's best to give people an option. Otherwise, again, not only the science, you get under legal liability. So this, I hope, is a friendly warning because it's going to be much harder if you don't do the right thing. Thank you.
Joanne Johnson.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I've had 5 children that have been put through the school district. My son graduated this year, and his graduation picture has a mask on him, and I cannot even see his face. My youngest daughter is starting high school this year, And this decision will actually determine whether we continue with this district or not. I cannot say enough to the educators, the teachers, and the love and the support that they show our children each and every day. But there is a line between a parent's role and a school's role. Our role as parents is to determine what is best for our children's health. It is our role to determine their morals and how they treat and respect others within the community, regardless of their color, their religion, anything about them. As Martin Luther King said, you judge people based on the content of their character. And if you don't like the content of their character, you just keep walking because it's really none of your business. The CDC has failed us over and over again. And as I said at a school board meeting before, that everything has become politicized. And our children should not be caught in the middle of what is going on politically between this side versus this side. I am also one that if my kid comes home or I get a call from a teacher, regardless, the teacher is the one that is going to get my backing. Sometimes life isn't fair, and I teach my children that life isn't fair, you have to adjust. However, there is no adjustment and there is no crossing the boundaries of the United States Constitution, which is absolutely being trampled on with our rights. I'm old enough to remember when my brother had the chicken pox and I was the one that had to put the Caladrill on him because my mom was hoping that I would get the chicken pox young enough to where it would not impact me. The reality of it is that our children are 50% more at risk of dying to get the vaccine than they are to actually go through COVID. And I respect the young lady that came up here, but I will tell you what we are teaching our children with this whole thing is that they are to be fearful. And that is not how I want my children to grow up.
Rick Garachi. Rick Garachi.
Good evening. My name is Rick Geraci, and I'm a grandparent of 2 children who go to school in this district. And my wife and I are very involved in their upbringing. We take great pride in helping them and assisting them. I have to tell you that I'm just going to say I endorse the things that I've heard this evening from people coming up here. I'm 76 years old, and I grew up in America, in a free America. And before my very eyes, I'm watching that freedom disappear. It's being dissipated by all the rules and regulations that are coming from people. You as board members are elected by us to represent us. I think from what I see and hear from this crowd, the vast majority of those people want representation for an option for masks and not a mandate. So, my only request is that you represent these people. You listen to them and you vote according to the way they want you to vote. And abolish this mask mandate. Thank you.
Amanda Ralston. Amanda Ralston.
Superintendent Dr. Sparlin, Board President Dr. Marino, and District 308 School Board members. My name is Amanda Ralston, and I am an Oswego resident and the parent of 2 students in School District 308. I urge you to all vote to end mask mandates at SD308 schools for the upcoming 2021-22 school year, regardless of vaccination status. Rather, allow students, staff, and their families to determine for themselves whether to continue using face masks. Kids have been everywhere this summer without wearing masks. They've spent time with friends and extended family on vacation and around Oswego. They've been congregating at church, eating out at restaurants, and shopping in stores, all without face masks. Why require them to put the mask back on just because they're within the walls of an SD308 school building? Further, should the board decide to require masks only for unvaccinated students and staff, it would be an even bigger mistake than mandating them for everyone. I'm concerned that bullying and discrimination could ensue against unvaccinated individuals should the board decide to require masks only for the unvaccinated. Parents who decide that their family will not get the COVID vaccine likely arrived at their decision after hours of research and consideration. It was not a haphazard or lazy choice. And medical freedom is an individual right that should never be infringed upon, bullied, or discriminated against. Members of our elected school board, you have the power to make this decision on behalf of the people that voted you into your position. Do not base your vote on how much money our state will give or threaten to take away from our district. Allow families and individuals decide what is best for themselves. I haven't even touched on the myriad science-based reasons why keeping our kids in masks is a terrible idea. We've heard a bunch already tonight. But just vote for masks to be optional for all SD308 students and staff, regardless of vaccination status, right at the start of the 21-22 school year and beyond. Let's get back to the business of learning and growing and being in community with one another again, the way a school year is meant to be. Thank you.
Inan. I only have a first name, Inan. E-N-A-N.
We're at 45 minutes.
This will be our last comment for the evening.
Good evening. I'm the brother to 2 sisters that are at the Oswego East High School, and I personally believe if you're unvaccinated, you should be required to wear a mask. This needs to happen because of the Delta variant that's come across our country right now. I'm Indian. I've got tons of family back home right now that because of the super spreaders and because of the Delta variants, everyone celebrated way too early. And guess what? Everyone is suffering for it and everyone is paying the cost now. We can't have the same thing happen here because it was so difficult to shut down the first time, and because we never really shut down, because we kept on saying it's gonna be 6 more weeks, it's gonna be 6 more weeks until we're done. Guys, it's been 2 years. I've lost internships, I've lost work because of this. I'm just as tired as you are. If everyone just stopped for 6 weeks, stayed inside and got this done with, we'd be done, but it's been 2 years. We could have been done.
Hey, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, the people who are speaking also gave you the same respect.
But instead we're here. at the opportunity to stop the Delta variant and to either get vaccinated and get our rates up to 70% so we can achieve herd immunity and get done with this thing, or wear a mask and protect your friends and protect the people that are scared. Because Trump rushed the vaccine. He was the one that helped it, and everyone cheered when he did. That was the big news, that he cut down on regulations and red tape. But now when the vaccines are here and when there's finally an end, everyone refuses to just get done with it or accept the consequences of not doing it. Others were saying that they teach their kids life is tough and has consequences. These are the consequences of not obeying public health guidelines. And how many years have your kids been getting vaccines? Since when did everyone turn into anti-vaxxers? And since when did this become such a weird discussion to have? That's all. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Is there a security?
Hey,
Let's please be respectful of one another. Thank you for those who have been.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. We have a long agenda, and there is an agenda item that we will be making a decision on. So let's please be respectful so that we can get through our agenda to get to the agenda item that I think most of you are here for. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on now to 5.1 board member comments.
Am I the only one making a comment this evening?
No. Nope. You can kick us off, though.
All right, I will do that. Good evening, Dr. Sparlin, Dr. Marino, Ms. Dahlquist, Ms. Lemon, Ms. Studer, and the Oswego 308 community. This week, as you can imagine, we have been deluged with emails regarding the mandated mask wearing in schools. I will save my comments for CRT for our next meeting. I would like to thank the parents, guardians, teachers, and administrators, many of them are sitting here this evening, that sent respectful, thorough, and expressive emails. Most helpful for me were the emails that explained how their students were affected by wearing masks, or the students and families that are concerned about what strategies we have in place should COVID rear its ugly head again. These emails are helpful and reflective of what your neighbors and fellow parents feel, and it helps us understand beyond our own personal lenses. What is not helpful and what I will not allow are the adversarial, threatening, demanding, rude, disrespectful emails that have been permeating my inbox, my Facebook Messenger, and as one message stated, do what's right if you know what is good for you. That is unacceptable. Our children are watching, our children are listening, and that's what we're teaching them. There are boundaries that must be respected. If you choose to call us names, threaten us, we have the right not to listen. Many parents have stated to us this week that we work for them, the taxpayers. This is a misconception. And so I'd like to take a moment to explain Illinois school governance and the role of the school board, taken directly from the Illinois Association of School Boards. And I quote, "Public education is the responsibility of the state. The state shall provide for an efficient system of high-quality public education and services. To carry out this constitutional mandate, the Illinois General Assembly enacted a body of laws known as the Illinois School Code. That statute prescribes how public education works and what shall take place in the public schools. The courts have held that the General Assembly has absolute power over education, subject to limits established by federal and state constitutions. It is impractical for the General Assembly to formulate policy for each local school district. Thus, the local school board is an agency of the state's sovereign power with respect to public education. Furthermore, the local school board is subject to regulation both by laws enacted by the legislature and by the promulgated rules of the Illinois State Board of Education, otherwise known as ISB. The local school board is the vehicle through which the will and aspirations of the people are translated into educational programs and educational services. Upon the local board rests responsibility for the local school system. This is basic to the principle of the American public school education. Many parents sent us a copy of the oath that we took, a copy of the duties and powers of the Board of Education. I will save you the time and effort. We all know the oath that we took, the code of conduct that we promised. We are mandated for training. We understand our role very well. I see both sides of this topic. I know it's incredibly important for everyone to have their student be in an environment where they can truly learn. And we all know that it hasn't been ideal for their last couple of years. But what we really need are to understand how your children are experiencing learning, their learning outcomes, how effective our board policies are working for the benefit of the students and the staff. If you see something wrong, we want you to tell us. We don't want you to not bring it to our attention. We will not shy away from this discussion, but we must have respect and civility for the betterment of our students and our staff. Our kids are watching, they are listening. Let's be respectful. Thank you.
I can go next. Thank you, Jen. I will echo many of your comments. I appreciate how many people have come tonight to express their thoughts and perspectives and opinions. I like seeing an audience full of people at board meetings. It's important for you to understand what's going on in the community as a whole, but especially in your kids' education. And we don't see a crowd very often, that's for sure. And I have also appreciated all of the very respectful and helpful emails that we have received, and many of the comments tonight have been very well thought out and respectful, and I definitely appreciate that. But I'll also echo what Jen said, and I don't appreciate threats. That's totally unnecessary. I'm not going to threaten you or your children. We are up here to do our best with the information that we have received, and we were, yes, elected by you to make decisions for your families, but based on the information we received from the district, and not because of public opinion. We want to know public opinion. We want to know what you think and what you feel and what your perspective is, because we all have different family units and come from different places. But like Jen said, that's to do what you want us to do. That's not our job. Many of times those things align, but it's just not. So thank you. That's all I have for right now.
Thank you, Ruth.
Hey, I'll jump in. As a teacher, of course I will. Thank you. Kids bully because parents bully. Listen, I have witnessed. Hold on a minute.
Okay,
we all have different opinions. I got it. We have many different opinions on what is okay. Listen, there's a whole group of people up here that are sitting up here without masks. That's what I see. And what I see is a community who's passionate about it, and I wish that you come back and are as passionate about school funding. Hold on. I just got a friendly warning from someone to vote a certain way who doesn't even live in this community. So,
Okay, we gave all of you a time for your public comment. I'm just going to ask that you be respectful and hear the board comment.
You're right, I am addressing you, and I should save it for public forum. You are 100% correct. So I will vote my vote this evening, knowing that I represent the entire community, not just one part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie.
So school starts in about a month. And I just want to encourage our community as a whole, not just the folks here, but I'm assuming we've got a few online, more than we used to have when we would total about 13 viewers, that there's going to be a lot of sign-up sheets that come our way as parents. And I'm speaking for myself too. Sometimes I feel like, I'm good, I don't need to sign up to help with this or that. But we make the community that our children grow up in just as much as our educators do. And we've had a singular focus for the last 18 months on a global event that we've never seen before. And it has been all-consuming for pretty much everybody, I think. And I'm pretty excited to see that we now have options, and we now have knowledge, and we now have a lot more ways to go about things, which is what we normally would do in schools. What I would encourage everyone in our community to remember as we have all of these options and we start to return to whatever our now normal looks like, be it masked, unmasked, vaccinated, unvaccinated, sick, well, or anything else in between, that we remember that we create the community for our students. We can sign our name to sign-up sheets and give 2 hours of our time and make the schools a better place and share our children's lives with them and do something that will also help them succeed in their educational future, because parents who volunteer are more likely to have children who succeed. So I would just encourage our community as we get back into another school year. I'm seeing sign-up sheets everywhere. I would encourage everyone to take a moment and sign up for something to help out their kids' schools. That's it.
Hi, everyone. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight and for advocating on behalf of your children. I want to acknowledge the many emails I received and read. If you wrote to me up until 4 o'clock when I was getting ready, I responded to every single email, and I will continue to do so. I do want to give a special thank you to all of those who expressed their opinion, no matter what it was, in a kind and courteous way. And as Ms. Johnson said, those that really detailed how masks have impacted their children were especially helpful, and I really appreciated that, because we do want to hear from our community. We do want to know what your opinions are and how our decisions impact your children. We may not always agree, but we can always treat each other with dignity and respect. And I want everyone to know that countless hours, discussions, research, and listening to all of you have gone into preparing for tonight's meeting. And at the end of this meeting, whether you feel like you've won something or you lost something, just please know that the board will always do their best to listen and to make what they believe is the best choice for all of our children. And that's why we're all here. Every single person in this room right now cares about our kids, and that's what we're here. And that's what I really, really want to see us unite over. I hope that as time goes on, we can really heal as a community and really come together and support all of our children, and especially their education. I'd really like to get past this and focus on education again. I really do appreciate all of you coming out. I also want to recognize this month as Disability Pride Month, and just let all of our students, our parents, everyone in our community with disabilities know that the board cares about them and recognizes the value that all of you bring to the community. And in doing my research on this month, I found this quote from America's disability community that really, I thought, summed it up best. And it says, "The month is a chance to honor each person's uniqueness as a natural and beautiful part of human diversity." So, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marino. Item 5.2 is the superintendent's report. So good evening, board. Today is July 12th, and in 5 weeks we will be welcoming our staff back on August 16th and 17th as we prepare to welcome back our students to the 21-22 school year on August 18th. The district and building level administrators have been working extremely hard on our back-to-school plans, and we are looking forward to full days, 5 days a week for the upcoming school year. We have a lot of information to cover this evening, and I will have much more to say on the topics later this evening, so I will reserve the rest of my comments for then. Thank you.
Okay. 6.0, approve consent agenda. 6.1, minutes from previous meeting. Sorry. And 6.2, my apologies.
I make a motion to approve all items under consent, including 6.1, minutes from the June 7th, 2021 Board of Education meeting, open and closed session, the June 26th, 2021 Board of Education workshop, open and closed session, and 6.2, to acknowledge the FOIA request received by the district.
Second.
Mrs. Simulton?
Aye.
Dr. Marino?
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood?
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson?
Aye.
Mrs. Croner?
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle?
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 7.1 is for information. Item 7.1 is financial statements. Does the board have any questions regarding the financial statements that are presented this evening? Item 7.2 is information regarding bids that went out on the projects listed for the cooling tower projects for the Wheatlands, Thompson, Bednarsik, and OEHS, and rooftop ductwork for OHS. Dr. Pexi?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Sparlin. I brought two guests with me today. So I've got Rob Allison, Director of Buildings and Grounds, and I've also got Charlie Johnsos, who is our architect from Kluber. So if there's some questions, we'll be able to answer those for you. And they're down at the podium in the dark there, so hey guys. Basically this item, the cooling tower project for the Wheatlands, for Thompson, Bednarsik, and OEHS, the way that we bid this package was there's a combination of things in there. Number one is it's the actual cooling towers for the schools, but it's also in looking at the cooling towers, we noticed that there were some support issues as well. When we bid the project out, it was kind of a package of kind of a facility assessments that we've done over the previous years. And we've had a variety of capital projects identified as such. These are kind of the last few trailing projects. And two things have happened since the time that those projects were identified. Number one is that we've kind of reevaluated and taken a look at reprioritizing some of our capital projects and needs. And number two, we also have the impact of the pricing structure that have come back with the bids due to COVID and the lack of being able to get materials and things like that. So the bids that we got were higher than what we expected to receive. And so based on that, we're just going to share with the board that we are going to look at reevaluating the bids, and we're going to look at resubmitting those at another time when the bidding market will be a little bit more favorable to those projects. So at this time, one thing we wanted to assure the board too is that there's nothing in critical failure. Nothing is going to fail as a result of this. We will still be able to get through our winter season with the chillers that we have, with our fall season with the chillers that we have, and we don't have any concerns with the equipment going into critical failure at this point. So to give us that opportunity to rebid that equipment would be a good thing for the district. So with that, we were wondering if there were any questions that the board had that were specific to this project.
That takes away most of my earlier questions.
Yeah, thanks, Allie.
I was just wondering, why such the gross over by like 30%? What was the issue with that?
Yeah, good question. We had a conversation about that, and when we broke up the bids, what it is there is the duct top on top of OHS. They're looking at insulating that, making it more energy efficient, and the insulation materials and the labor for doing that work, the amount that we need to insulate the OHS ductwork, came in much higher than expected.
Okay.
So, it came in twice as much as what we expected.
My understanding is there's generally a sheet metal issue going on kind of all over the place, making all of this stuff more expensive, much like the wood one.
Yep.
I like waiting,
Yeah.
if we can.
And the reason too, we're going to ask the board to do this is we did bid the package out, but we bid it as kind of one bid, and so we don't have the option of saying, well, we like these numbers, we'll take this work, and we don't like these numbers, we won't take this. We need to reject them all, and when we rebid, we will rebid with the potential to select what we want to reject and what we want to proceed with.
Great.
And one more question, will that come out of the ESSER funds?
You know what? No, that's actually, those are dollars that can come out of capital improvement. But I know what you're getting at, and the one thing is working with the ESSER grant. It's projects that, and you're talking ESSER 3. Those are projects that directly have an impact on the air quality of the learning environment. So we'll work when the ESSER 3 dollars become available. We'll make sure that we earmark projects that could fit in that category.
The one other ask that I would have is when the bids are resubmitted to us for consideration, can we know what you considered for each bid in order to make the decision beyond cost?
Yeah, I think, and that's what Rob and Charlie and I were talking about, is we'd like to give the board an update on this is the work, this is a facility plan that we're looking at going out on bid for. So rather than waiting for the bids and saying these are the bids for the work that we put out, you'll know what work we're putting out to be bid on. So I think there's just been, with this past year, there's been an enormous amount of change and things that we've had to keep up with that some of these more routine items kind of fell off the radar.
Got it. And one addition to that, and when we after the bid is done and you come back with your recommendation, we just want to know beyond cost, how did you pick the vendors or contractors that you selected?
Yeah, absolutely. Good.
Got it.
And so, John, also, will we be able to, I think with the fact that you've now have a better idea of what the estimates are based upon the cost and the things that have required those costs to go up, we'll be better able to determine, what the amount should be versus being so far off from before.
Yeah, true. And that's what I was going to say is a lot of these projects were kind of spec'd out at an earlier time. And so when we did go to bid, this was a little surprising. But we also had the specs, so we thought it was responsible to put that bid out there to see what we would get in return. So this was a good exercise for the district to engage in.
Absolutely.
Maybe if we wait, those prices will come down on some of the
Yeah,
supplies.
or at least be separated out so we can pick and choose.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bexley. All right, item 7.3 is an informational report in regards to our AVID program. Tonight, we welcome Drew Munsinger and Allie Anderson to the board. So, Drew and Allie, the floor is yours for the presentation on AVID.
Alrighty, well, thank you very much for having us tonight. We kind of look at this more as an update for those of you who have been around a while and have heard the term AVID before, and for those of you who are new and maybe are, what is this system of support that we have here in District 308? And that's really what AVID is a system of support for all students. The AVID mission, AVID actually stands for Advancement via Individual Determination, and its mission statement is to close the opportunity gap by preparing all students for college readiness and success in a global environment. And I would say not only just college success, but also college, career, and like Allie likes to say, life success as well. So all students going through our district, how can we best prepare them for the next steps in life?
Drew, could you speak into the microphone a little bit more so those at home can hear? Thank you.
There you go. Thank you. So really our timeline here is we started bringing in AVID strategies around 2014 through the high schools, and we started to grow with ninth grade and then started to add AVID strategies into school, not only in the elective, but also among all grade levels in the high schools, and those AVID strategies, which we'll cover here in a little bit. And then also, the next year we started with junior high, bringing in an elective, and then also working with all the schools to start to bring AVID strategies into all of the different curricular areas. It's been integrated into all District 308 buildings, and Allie's going to talk a little bit more about elementary and how that works. A lot of it is professional development that we give to teachers that we train in-house, and which are best practices, and how teachers can then take these practices and fit them and customize them into their own curriculum. So it's not saying do it this way, it's what would you like to teach, how would you like to teach it, and what are some of the best ways that we can help you get there, and here's some things that you can try, and here's some things that we know are successful. We've also had a couple showcases at Southbury and OHS and Fox Chase. These are showcases where schools from around the area, including several states, Iowa and Wisconsin, send people to come and see our schools and all the different effective strategies that we have and that we implement into the schools. And they kind of come around and they look at some of the AVID elective classes. They go into other classrooms to see what does a Socratic seminar look like in English class? What does a philosophical chair discussion look like in a choir class, and things like that. And so we've been very successful in promoting all the great things that our teachers and staff are doing around our district.
All right, so why AVID for 308? Two things that we really think about is that we want to advocate and empower for all of our students. So what do they need educationally, and how do we allow it so that they understand those things, they advocate for themselves, what works best for their learning, and really start to create those student-facilitated classrooms instead of just directly teacher-led at all times. And really the largest part in working with elementary and moving into 6 through 12, we look at school-wide. So it's not a separate curriculum, it's instructional practices, and we'll go into some of the examples that teachers are weaving in throughout their instruction. So it's not an AVID time, it really is, I have this math lesson and this is what I want to get to. I'm going to infuse these instructional practices that I find to be successful into the lesson that I was already teaching. And so when we look at it, again, we talked about the integrated instructional strategies, really building relational capacity, but not only just the teachers really getting to know their kids, but building that community in the classroom so that the students feel confident when they're having a Socratic seminar or they're having a conversation about something that they learned, that they can make those connections to themselves, those connections to their peers, and they feel comfortable talking and sharing within their classroom. College, career, and life readiness. We want to make sure that we continue to strengthen having college, career, and life ready students, not just eligible students. AVID Elementary, I always think about this, academic skills become academic habits. And there's so many things that we know students need in life, right? So we know that they're gonna need to collaborate with peers in whatever job, college, career, life situation that they're in. But do we directly show them how that's done? And do we regularly practice that in a safe environment with what we're learning? Thank you, my clicking assistant, I appreciate it. I can't multitask up here. And so again, kind of continuing, we really thought to look at critical thinking and inquiry, not just asking questions, but what types of questions are we asking the kids? We talk about with our elementary kids, you know, are we just finding the question in the book, or are we really thinking and using what we know plus the book, or are we thinking about our own personal experiences, connections with maybe a character or something that we're learning? We want them to have the confidence to learn, the confidence to talk with one another, the confidence to share their ideas, and it's okay that I'm sharing and maybe listening, collaborating, and then sharing a friend's idea also. Kids are really great at talking about what they think, but we practice a lot of like, tell me what your friend said, and building on those skills, growth mindset, and that resiliency to really, even if something is harder or something didn't go right the first time, how can we critically think again to try it in a different way? So teachers are supporting students, K-12 with the AVID school-wide, on insisting on rigor. All curriculums or all things that we're doing in every class, every content area, how can we think even deeper? How can we continue to challenge all students? And then breaking down the barriers. If kids know, I learn best in this way. So that might be a barrier that I need to know, how do I advocate for that? Or how do I share that with my teacher and my peers and know that about me so that I continue to learn in the best way for myself? Aligning our work, so using common language, whichever content area that we're working in, or if we're having kiddos and we're practicing, giving eye contact when we speak to someone in kindergarten, we're aligning that work all the way when they go up, whether it's a Socratic seminar in 2nd grade or it's a Socratic seminar in 12th grade, and really aligning those ideals for the kids. Advocating for what the kids need, and really advocating for that engagement of their learning. So it's not just teacher driven, but it's advocating for them being engaged in their daily lessons. And then just learning their stories. And that goes back to what I said, kids knowing kids, building those relationships between teachers and kids and kids and kids. All right, and then when we hear about AVID, it's like, what does that mean in the classroom, right? And so these are the acronym WICR are the 5 things that we look at. And when we talk about writing, it's not just the writing process. It's also starting to think about, what does it mean to write like an artist versus writing like a historian versus writing when I'm writing a narrative story. But it's also writing to reflect. So thinking about what we've learned and what did we learn from that? What did I do? What was interesting about that? What questions do I have? Or how might I apply that to my future? Like, how am I going to use this? Kids always have that question, and it's such an awesome question, and allowing them that space to think about that. Inquiry, so that critical, deeper thinking, not just that surface level thinking and asking a question that's right there in the book, but really getting kids to question. And I've talked about when our kids are little, they always ask and think in questions. We all have our little ones that are constantly asking questions in the back seat, and we want to continue to grow that. We're having kids question and think in life, as opposed to sometimes that they turn into those periods at the end of a sentence. We lose a little bit of that, and so we want to continue to develop that. Collaboration is huge. College, career, life, we all know that we collaborate in everything that we do. So really working on what does collaboration mean with both verbal, nonverbal, taking turns, and really truly listening. Let's stop and pause before we respond to show the person that we really truly heard them before we gave our response. And then again, reading to learn, not necessarily just strictly reading in a curriculum, but what does that mean and how are we really digging deeper?
And I think Allie did a really nice job of talking about how WICR really permeates everything that we do K-12. So it's not just at a specific grade level or a specific content area. These are skills that we start in kindergarten or pre-K, and we work with teachers to embed these kinds of skills through everything that they teach to make their lessons even better. We have great teachers, and they're doing an amazing job teaching these students. It's the level of support that we hope to bring to them to make them even more incredible teachers. And so with K-12 or pre-K-12, with WICR and all of these strategies, then we also start at the secondary level, we start to actually have what we call the AVID elective. And that's where we bring in a specific subset of students that we go and find to be a part of this collaborative group of family, for lack of a better word, that starts in secondary. We begin right now in 8th grade, where we go out and we ask our teachers, who are these students? We kind of have a set guideline. It's not hard, it's kind of loose. Who are the kids that we know are good learners, who are maybe having grades right in the middle? Maybe they're not at the top of the class, or maybe not at the bottom. Maybe they ask good questions, or maybe we know that they're just really smart, but they just kind of sit in the back and don't really raise their hand because they don't have that confidence yet. And so we seek to find those students, and we have teacher recommendations, and then we bring them in and we give them an application with a bunch of different questions, like tell us about yourself, what are some things that you struggle in, what are some of your strengths, The kids who bring the applications back, we go through an interview process, and we really get to know the kids, know their stories, and listen, because every student's story is different, and we really start to find those kids, once again, AVID, via individual determination, who are those students that really have that grit and that drive to want to be better. And then we select them for the elective. And so really what we're trying to do is really bring them into these wicker skills and really bring home the fact of how do you take and use notes? How do you collaborate? Get lots and lots of hyper practice of collaboration and asking questions and saying, maybe I don't know this, but could you help me work through this program? And so that's really where the AVID electives comes from, and hopefully they stick with us from 8th grade all the way in through graduation. We try to go for is 100% post-secondary success, to and through, right? So our average class size for our elective right now is around 26. Many of them are going to be first-generation college-going students. Now, not all, just because not everybody's story is the same. And so what looks good on paper or what looks maybe different on paper is not necessarily the story of the students. But historically, they are underrepresented and underserved, and those are really the students that we're looking for that maybe just need that extra system of support, and that's really what the elective is for.
And just to add on to that, so that's those two things. I talked about the school-wide, that's K-12, right? So that's all students getting these instructional practices. Then the elective is for students that can also use these additional support, systems of supports every day as an elective, so that all students are getting these things, and then the elective is more of an intensive curriculum of certain things, preparing them for college career and life.
And so when we talk about going out and finding kids, especially that are historically underrepresented and underserved, our next graphic here just kind of illustrates that. If we look at our SD308 demographics versus our AVID secondary demographics, you can see that we change a little bit. And so we are trying to find students who are maybe on the margins, or we are trying to find students who historically may have not been given the opportunities to be challenged in a way that we know that they can. So and we are also right now, we're fairly heavy female to male ratio. And we run about 42% economically disadvantaged, where the district right now is about 25%. So a lot of our students come from already behind in some things. And so those are the types of students that we know once they have those tools to go out and find a job or go to college or go into the trades or go into the military right after school, that's life-changing for them. And hopefully that's then generationally changing for their families going forward. One of the great things that we look at is every year, what do our AVID seniors do? And this year, even during the pandemic, even during not all instruction, all online, half online, we still had our AVID seniors awarded and offered over $6 million worth of scholarships. We have, I believe, upwards of 8 to 10 kids going to school for free because of their academic merit and the things that they've done. And I think that in this situation, it's just going to get better and better and better because of the types of skills of system of support that we do with these AVID elective kids. I can't say enough about them. They are tremendous. They've earned everything that they strive for, and some of their stories will break your heart, but man, are they great kids, and they really represent the best of what 308 has to offer. So we'll keep it short with that. That's just, I asked the teachers to give us a snapshot of the kids every year, kind of as a family album. So that's AVID in a nutshell right now.
Drew, Allie, thank you so much for the presentation. Well done. I'm sure there are a few questions that the board may have. So board, go ahead and ask your questions. Ms. Doyle.
Sorry, I've just been around a while since AVID started, so I have a few questions. Because I've seen the evolution of this in 308 from just being at one school to being at all of the schools and being implemented district-wide. And I've seen over the years, some of these things change a little bit. And so I have some questions. First, though, I have to say, especially Mr. Munzinger, I know that your students do feel like they're part of a family. We had the privilege of having several speak here a few years ago. And these are really, truly amazing kids, and you create something very special for them at OH. So thank you very much for everything you do. I know you go way above and beyond for them. My question here is that we've seen this change. Initially, this had been primarily for underrepresented students who were, it used to not say mostly, it used to be for first generation, and that's kind of evolved. So I'm kind of curious how that's happened. Two, tell us, why is it called AVID? It's advancement via individual determination, but this is a company. And this is the service that they provide. Why do we use that service? And maybe that's a faith question. And third, why do we start with a teacher nomination? To me, that's always seemed to be something I'd like to know more about, because if this is via individual determination, why do the teachers limit which students have the opportunity to apply for that individual determination? So those are my 3 questions.
Awesome. So let's start with your last question first.
Okay.
I think we start with the teacher nomination because they are the ones who see these kids all the time. And so for us just to look at test scores or just to look at economically disadvantaged kids and just pull those kids and put them in a list, I think does some students a disservice, because we are trying to find those kids who maybe sit in the back and maybe don't fit the typical profile, but the teacher recognizes, hey, there's some greatness in this student. And so I'm going to nominate that student where they may have not been thought of as a potential person for the AVID elective. So that's one aspect of that. We don't just sit and look at teacher nomination, but we do bring in all sorts of things once we get names. We generally start with about 150 names at each junior high when we start to select a group that boils down to about 26. Now, why does it boil down to about 26? I think was part of your second question, is we are looking for that individual determination. You may have 2 students who look the same on paper and maybe have similar backgrounds, but one is determined to change their story. And those are the students that we want to offer all the supports for. Not that we don't want to offer the supports to the other students, but that's where the school-wide aspect of it really comes in. So both students are getting systems and levels of support, but we want those kids that when they find barriers in front of them, they overcome them. They don't just hit the barrier and walk away and say, I'm done. Like that's that second part. And then to your third part, which I believe is, why was it originally mainly
The
first
company.
gen?
Why this company?
Oh, why this company?
I can take that if you want to. So when we all attended the first AVID training when we went, it was one of those where, you know, sometimes you're not always, not every training is equal, right? So when you go, everyone was like, wow, that was amazing. And through AVID, what they've really done is they've taken actual tangible things for teachers to do. So we know that I can have Socratic seminars, but what they've done so well is provided examples step by step from primary all the way to 12th grade. Try this, try that. There's lesson plans, there's differentiated based on each kid's needs. There's different tools to use and such a variety. And not only just, you know, elementary's got all these things, junior high's got all these things, each content area's got all these things. So it's really the wealth of what was provided in the training. And they're awesome about allowing us to then take that and do what's best for our district and allowing us to then in-house train. So like Drew and I do the majority of the teacher training, and what's so impactful about that is in my job I'm able to go in and model and work with the kids and work with the teachers and pull in actual artifacts for the teachers, and then we have these discussions of like this is what works with our curriculum and in our district. And so they also allow us to do that now where we can build that capacity within our district what works for us. I don't know if that answered.
I guess I have one last question, then I'll let everyone else ask, because I think I know the answer to this already. What's with the big binder?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. I'm actually glad you answered that, because AVID is not about the binder, but the binder is a physical thing that we see. And AVID is so many more. When you hear these kids' academic language of like, I hear what you're saying, but I have a different point of view and building on. However, the whole idea of AVID, again, goes back to those academic skills that we're teaching to create academic habits. So we know organization is important. And we know that being organized, no matter what you do in life, is going to help you to be successful. But we also need to understand that we want to directly show kids some ways to be organized. Now, AVID is not an AVID binder. It's actually referred to as an organizational tool. So nowhere in the AVID bylaws or whatever there are does it say it has to be a binder. And in fact, many teachers have said, hey, this works to do perhaps a folder for them when we have a take-home folder, or what does our backpack look like? I also will honestly tell you, I think that's an area for growth, for discussion. There's not one way to organize, and just like you would differentiate in any other way, I think that's something that we need to look. I know there are kids doing it. Some kids have crates because that works better for them. So that was one thing, that was an idea that a lot of teachers really liked. When you're a 3rd or 4th grade teacher and you know that the kids have everything in their binder, and when you ask for a pencil, you no longer are missing kids for 5 minutes as they're diving into their desk to pull out a pencil. It's like, wow. And so it's more of a, hey, we know that everything's all set. Let's work together. What do we need to refill? You don't have glue in there? Let's put more glue in there so that you're set up for success. However, area of growth, and teachers are differentiating what's best for kids. It's teaching them how to be organized. That doesn't mean you have to be organized with the binder.
And I think we'll probably grow on that now that we are moving to one-to-one, and we're going to really start to leverage those digital skills and really kind of see how do we move away from the tangible into the digital world as well. Do we know if it's going to be 100% success? No, but this is the next evolutionary step that we see for this district in terms of that.
And I've been talking with 5th grade teachers too, like, let's show them everything so that they can pick what's best for them, because that's what the whole point of it is, right? Is we want them to organize their learning.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate the passion and the explanation. You've answered my questions.
Hi, Ellie and Drew. Thanks for the presentation. And, you know, there's a saying that I can show you better than I can tell you. And I love the fact that these presentations are great, but I've also seen the students in action. I've seen Socratic seminars at the elementary level, and those awesome stories, Drew, that you talked about at the high school level and at the junior high level. And so where can we see this in action?
That's actually an outstanding area of growth for Drew and I think, to make that more more shown for families. A lot of times what teachers will do is, and this is an area that we've also trying to increase, is like the kids are doing these awesome things, but they don't even realize maybe that's like an AVID thing, or they don't even know how to say that. So teachers are starting to put more into their newsletters, like, hey, we did a philosophical chairs, that's an AVID strategy, and it allows us to agree and disagree in an organized manner. Or this collaborative structure, 4 corners, allows kids to get up and get movement in while they're learning. So honestly, that's a fantastic way. Other than what the teacher has told you, that is definitely an area of growth that I think would be great to build on.
And at the secondary level, as once again, we welcome anybody to come in and see all the different differentiation skills and systems of support, not only in the regular classroom, but also in the AVID electives. So if you want to come and see and sit in on a 48-minute AVID lesson or AVID elective class period, we would love that. So then you really start to get the feel of what it is. Once again, we can explain it all to you, but once you actually are in that room, and I know that Ms. Dahlquist and Dr. Sparlin have been in there, and they could be like, yes, now I'm starting to see what you guys are talking about. So we would love that anytime.
Wait, so can I ask a question that goes with that? So how can we take it from those 1 or 2 classrooms and get it out into the whole district? Like, what do you need from this board to get that expanded?
So I would say what we need is just the continued support from district to allow us to work with teachers and district directors and the different curriculum specialists and the principals and the department chairs to give us the time to sit and look at curriculum and how can we infuse these AVID skills and these systems of supports. So it's time is really what we need. That'll be the best way for us.
And I would also add the Climate for Learning framework, where we're talking about what is good instruction. Drew and Allie and I, that seems like so long ago that we actually sat in my office and did that, but came up with expectations for engagement, not only for our staff to provide for our students, but our principals and assistant principals to provide to teachers during their trainings, and our commitments as district administrators on how to train principals on best practices in instruction and engagement. And then we've built classroom walkthrough schedules to visit every school this year with the whole team, and having people and administrators visit schools other than their own to do more of that monitoring and the implementation, and seeing that's what we're talking about when we're talking about a really good instructional practice, and spreading the successes that a lot of our schools and staff are having to be more district-wide.
Sorry. As a teacher, I hear what you're saying, and I also know that teachers sometimes are not the best sharers in the world. So I think that when we talk about doing these walks and when they talk about bringing these people in and having the time, I think it would be like, let's take a unit and let's send it out to the entire district, and then let's bring everybody back. Because I don't want to make more work for teachers. I don't want it to feel like more work, but I want it to be more, I guess, defined work.
So this is very awkward because you're directly behind me.
We thought about that.
So I'm going to try and not get whiplash, but I do have several questions because while I've heard great things about the AVID programs, particularly at the high school level, my personal experience and the experiences that have been shared with me, it seems more like a corporate America type situation where at the corporate office they're up here and they've got all these great ideas and it sounds so amazing, and on paper it's like, yes, let's do this, and then you get to the local location and they're like, we don't really know what's happening here, how is this being implemented in a positive way. And I was happy to hear, I'm sorry, it's so weird. There we go. That you are taking lessons learned and that you have teachers who are starting to recognize, oh, maybe this form of organization is not great. Because my experience had been, we had the giant binder and it gave my kid back problems, and that was in 5th grade, and he still has back problems, and now he's in high school. And I sort of blame the AVID binder, and I maybe might have told the teacher that if I see this binder come home again, I'm going to burn it.
I have 2 kids that had binders also.
Yeah,
so I'm
not a fan.
As well as,
That did not work for my kids' learning styles, but they were told that they have to get, like, that's the message. You have to get this binder and these tabs, and you have to organize it in this way, and it has to be this size. And when I said, oh, we're going to differentiate the use of the AVID binder and get separate ones for each class because that's the way my kid learned, I was asked, please don't do that. And I said, oh no, we're not asking permission, I'm just letting you know that's how we're going to do it. So I hope that we will move towards teaching more than one method of organization. All 3 of my kids do something different that works for them, and I think it's really important that everything we do in education is about differentiating to meet those learning styles, except this. And also the note taking. Like, I appreciate that we're teaching them how to take notes, and I like, that there's like a form that they use to take the notes, but what if they don't take notes most effectively that way? So I hope that we also can expand that a little bit.
Yeah, and for sure, because AVID, again, is about whether you're taking notes. It's not about necessarily which way you set up the notes. You might be mind mapping and drawing, and you're going back and adding. So I think that's just one of more, again, us growing and saying, like, okay, you might have learned this one thing at a training, but there's also different ways to it, and adapting in that way also.
And I just want to say, while I appreciate all of administration's enthusiasm for this program, and I really appreciate both of you being here tonight, I echo what Ruth's saying, and as you're saying, there is more than one way. Again, it's being said at the top, that's not how it's being delivered. And when I talk to the administration, they love this program. And I am speaking more to how it's weaved through K through 12. But I don't know, I personally don't know a student or parent that says something positive, and it usually is about the binder or the notes. And I do think we're putting such an emphasis on differentiation in our school and equity in our school. you know, being a psychologist, having that background, and you think about kids with learning disabilities and kids with other issues, and they do all learn differently. So I would just really love to see that expanded. And I know you already said it's an opportunity for growth, so not trying to hit you over the head with it, but
No, and I understand that. And the binder and the notes you see too, and that's why it would be awesome to see all of the collaborative structures where kids are getting up and moving and they're talking with one another and they're conversing, and seeing those opportunities to see, like, these are the visuals that you're seeing versus like all the learning and rigor and other things that are happening in the classroom that might not be as like visual, right? Or maybe presented in a structured way by teachers where it's this way and this is the way we're going to do it.
yeah. And I'm not saying that there are no parents or students who like the program. Please don't take it that way at all. And I'm sure that the, you know, the stats for the elective and for people graduating, I mean, we of course want to see that. I just think that we can make some tweaks to how we implement, you know, K through 12 to just that differentiation piece. So
Agreed.
Yeah.
I have one other question, because I think you probably are going to have another question about statistics that I know you had asked earlier. But my question is, how much is it? Is this something we pay for? Is this grant funded? Is this, like, that's my question.
It's grant funded. Faith, do you want to add on to that?
Correct. So we have a Title II federal and state combined grant for professional development, and the school fees that are part of that process and being in the AVID membership are part of that. We do have teacher salaries for the electives that, you know, take up that section, but as you think of whatever those students would have during second period, they would need a teacher of something else if they weren't in that. So I think sometimes people look at, well, how many AVID teachers do you have? And that's a cost to the district, but those students would also need to be in a different class if they weren't in AVID. So by far, the vast majority is grant funded.
And if, I'm going to talk about statistics, but if possible, if there's any other data that we could see about the benefits besides going to college. We've also talked about the military and trade school. I'd like to know more how that's being encouraged and how many students are going on those tracks, as well if there's other ways for us to measure whether it's increased grades or, you know, reading and math, things like that. It would just be helpful for us.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're starting to work with administration as we look at school improvement plans, like, okay, so this is the school improvement plan, what instructional practices through AVID are going to be like our action goals or our steps in order to meet those, and so that's been really fantastic. The last couple of years really embedding those so that they are able to use the instructional practices that the teachers are enjoying using in order to get there. And the kids, again, engagement is huge. We need to get those littles, but you know what? We need to get the 12th graders up too and moving and talking as well.
Can I also ask one more question? So I know that it's teacher recommendations, but what about parent recommendations?
So we've we do allow, or I shouldn't say allow, we do have self-nomination. So if a student says, you know what, that sounds like something I really want to be a part of, we absolutely encourage students to say, hey, why don't you consider me? And they become part of that same process as all. And we've actually taken kids into the program based upon that determination factor. Like, I want to do this. And then they go in and we interview, and they come through and they answer the questions about their lives, and we really see if it's a great fit. And some of our most successful students have been those ones who have self-nominated themselves. So you know, that's historically something that's been very successful.
Drew, how well do we get the word out for the self-nomination for the students?
So that starts in 7th grade, because we start to talk to the 7th graders for the 8th grade year, and so that happens once we hit around February. We really start to talk up, hey, this is an elective, and you have the self-nomination process, and through school announcements and school website and things like that, we have we put the self-nomination out. I believe most junior highs have put it out in their school newsletter with a link or something like that. I believe each school does it a little bit differently. And then at the 8th graders, then we also say, hey, if this is something you want to be considered in high school, maybe you didn't get in or weren't part of it in 8th grade, but you want to continue and want to try this thing out, once again, we put that into school newsletters and things like that, and we've had 8th graders self-nominate themselves and become part of the AVID program in the high schools as well.
Can we also maybe start that in 9th grade? Because my 7th and 8th grade students would not have said, hey, sign me up for that, Mom.
I think that there's always, once again, it comes down to, yes, absolutely, we can talk to 9th graders and say, hey, here's something. We wouldn't want to add, students as juniors because they're already learning all of these skills, one on top of each other, but definitely we can bring students in. Another neat fact is that we have students from around the country that maybe were in an AVID program in California or in Florida, and they come into our school district. As soon as we identify you're part of AVID, we bring them in right as family. If that's something they want to continue, we make sure that we work with their schedules so that they can continue being part of our AVID family. So that's another big, nice benefit.
Can I ask one more question about the access part? When you have the mandatory meeting that precedes, there's a mandatory meeting that's required of all 7th graders who'd like to apply to be part of AVID. How do you make sure that students whose parents don't read the newsletter or have an email or in any way, shape, or form participate, because sometimes these are the students you're trying to reach, how do you make sure, besides just a mention in ELA, which I believe is how it currently happens, that they know that they can apply for themselves? Because I do believe that there is a conception that it has to be through teacher nomination. Is that something that we could work to broaden?
Absolutely, and I think every school, especially the secondary level, has a coordinator kind of level position where they're kind of in charge of their schools along with their administrator, working on that, and we can definitely make sure that that's something that is fine-tuned, so that, once again, we're trying to find those kids in the middle, maybe some of the kids that don't raise their hand.
Or maybe they can't come to an evening mandatory meeting.
And what worked really good the following year is we got everybody on a Meet, and so we would interview all of our students, at home through Google Meets, and that's how we did a lot of our interviews. And I think that we can also continue that, not only if they can't make that meeting night, then we have this new technology available to us, and I think that that's offering up more possibilities as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Allie. Appreciate you being here today.
Can we change binders to Trapper Keepers? They're back.
The one with the race.
I think that's a different company, and you got to buy a different license for that.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Item 7.4 is in regards to our district equity statements. At our last meeting, the board had asked the administration to work with our attorney on the phrasing of the statements that were discussed. At that meeting, the board asked us to make the suggested adjustments and to bring them back to the board. So that's what we've done for this evening. After this evening, the administration will take the adjusted statements back to the board as Equity Advisory Committee to review. And once that's been done, we will bring those statements back to the board for final review. The information has been provided to you. We've made the adjustments from our last conversation. Mrs. Lemon and Ms. Dahlquist worked on the suggested changes. Are there any questions on the changes that have been made?
No, but thank you guys very much for working to adjust that conglomeration of random thoughts.
Yes, ditto.
I want to clarify slide 6.
Okay.
We had talked at the meeting about potential legal ramifications of the wording.
And we fixed it.
Okay.
Yep.
That's it.
Any other questions regarding the equity statements as they have been presented? All right, item 7.5 is an update on our return to in-person instruction for the 21-22 school year.
And we have one clicker.
Are you going to be sitting behind me again? Oh, man.
No.
Okay.
We felt it was important to bring this back to the board as we work on putting the finishing touches on the plan for the 21-22 school year. And Faith is going to take us through this evening's presentation.
Thank you for stalling long enough until I got here. So, want to give you important updates for the upcoming school year. The state and the resolution has changed guidance since we first gave information back in April and May. We continue to get updated guidance even now. So, would like to highlight, here we go, both the changes, which there are none for our in-person plans, but there are some ramifications for our remote learning. In fact, you'll see a change here that instead of it being called remote learning, it's temporary distance learning. So let me just remind everybody for in-person instruction that we are talking 5 full days at regular school times and hours with lunch. This has built in some time at the start of the school year to have some extra welcoming and activities around safe and nurturing climate because some of our students have not been here for a year and a half. And then, as you already heard, a big emphasis on differentiated instruction. We had some students that did quite well at achieving some of their academic standards, and we also had students that struggled. So while differentiation is always important, it is going to be very critical as we all come back together. I'd now like to talk about temporary distance learning. The new guidance requires that remote learning only need to be available for students that meet both of these criteria, that they are, 1, ineligible for a vaccine, and they are on quarantine. And the quarantine that the state is speaking about is that temporary quarantine that would be around 10 days, probably not even 10 school days, because usually you have some weekends, maybe 2, that are in there. As we thought about what is the right thing to do on that, we wanted to provide that remote learning, or as I'm saying, the temporary distance learning for any students that are on quarantine, so we're not having to ask families whether you chose to be vaccinated or not, or whether you were eligible for that or not. We want to provide that opportunity to all of our students if they have the unfortunate event of being on quarantine. So how we want to do that is, again, it's only available to students that are on quarantine. That's why it's temporary distance learning. At grades 6 through 12, temporary distance learning would be provided by the classroom teacher. If you think back to how we did during remote learning, and the teachers had students that were in person and students at remote, there will be the same type of activities where the classroom teacher would allow students to listen in and or participate through Google Meets. And again, it would be that short period of time that students are on quarantine. At elementary, we remain convinced that it would be very difficult for a teacher to teach in person and students remotely at exactly the same time. So for that reason, we will have at least 2 staff members that would be, when they don't have students that are on quarantine, providing substitute and teaching services. But when we did have students that were on quarantine, they would provide at least the 2 hours of daily instruction that are recommended from the state from a teacher to keep them going in their literacy and math activities, as well as learning activities that students could do on their own. The funding for these 2 positions that we would be doing this would be coming out of the ESSER monies. So we did have 25 parents that completed our request for in-person exemption form. And since the state changed that guidance, all 25 applicants have been notified. And we've talked about that because all students will need to attend school in person in the fall. I would encourage, as there are questions about any of our plans for the fall, we do have a link that my staff is answering usually within 24 hours, even on the weekends, to answer questions. And we are really looking forward to returning to 5 full days in the fall.
Thank you, Faith. Does the board have any questions on the update Faith just provided?
I have a quick question. If a parent had a question in regards to remote learning about, hey, can I get a note from my doctor saying that my kid needs to be remote learning, would that be the type of question that they should be submitting on the website that would be responded to?
We have been answering some of those questions there. They can also call and talk to our district nurse or talk to me. But having a doctor's note saying that you need that would not open up the opportunity to have remote instruction for a lengthy period of time. Again, this is for students that are on quarantine. In the past, pre-COVID, if there were really extenuating health circumstances, there is homebound tutoring that parents could look at, with a school team, and whether that's a possibility. But the state requirements and things around that are much more reduced. That is an hour a day of instruction and tutoring to help with activities, and even that option is not meant to be used long-term or as a replacement for instruction.
Okay, thank you.
How about questions specific to elementary? So I guess my concern is, because all of the elementaries will not be in the same place at the same time, if using a remote teacher would be the best way to do it, or using their actual classroom teacher who either digitally sends home what they did that day with a video, or...
So we're looking at some combinations of that. If you think about a student that, someone used the example of chickenpox, they were out for a while, you'd have some activities that go with that, but we're also providing and are required by the state to provide at least 2 hours of synchronous instruction from a certified staff member. So it cannot be just activities that are sent home for families to do on their own.
May I touch on a couple common questions that I've been hearing? Lockers. I know,
right.
but it's a thing.
New guidance just came out this weekend, so we're still working through all of that, and we will be giving full detailed information on what that looks like. But because the state was even kind of unclear on some of those things, we want to work with our staff and our building personnel to determine the right exact way to do that, and then push out mass communication on what that would be, not try to answer that here with my best judgment, and then have a whole lot of people that need to be included in that communication and decision not part of that.
We can trust, though, that you'll have a decision.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I wanted to be clear on. We'll have a decision on PE, we'll have a decision on lockers, we'll have a decision on buses, all that good stuff in good time. How many pages was this guidance this time?
Oh, I didn't count the pages.
Was it longer than last year's?
No, it was.
Right, I feel like I went through it faster, but sometimes, honestly, I'm used to reading them now, so I don't know.
That prompts a question that I have too, unless you're not done.
No, I'm good.
And this is probably a question for you, Teresa, who's also behind me.
Hi.
Has there been updated guidance about quarantining rules? And
oh, that's a good question.
So there was some guidance released several weeks ago, but then with the new guidance that was just released over the weekend and some additional clarification since then, the state is anticipating releasing an FAQ document that hopefully will go into a lot more detail in regards to the quarantine. The decision tree that we've used in the past to guide that hasn't been updated by the state since May.
Excellent. So maybe that will come with the information about lockers?
We hope we'll get a lot more detailed information. Yeah, it is much, much shorter compared to what we had received in the past.
Okay, great, thank you.
And will that also come with what is our plan? Should a building need to quarantine entire sections, or have we come up with some plan for that already?
I feel like that was last year's plan. I think they did that once.
Yeah. We will be updating the full safety plan to address all those same topics that we had last year based on the guidance that we have. And so it's kind of rolling out piece by piece right now. So we will be updating that, and it'll all be maintained on the Return to School fall link on the district homepage.
And you'll make sure you've really told everybody where to look for that when it's ready to go.
Yep.
We won't be surprised.
What?
Well, we won't be surprised
by
that first day. Okay.
No.
Well, it'll be done by the first day is my question.
I did send an email to Dr. Sparlin and Teresa today and Dr. Marino, just suggesting that everything needs to be covered. Parents need to understand when the data, if the data changes, the kind of if-then scenarios, decision trees, and that I would really like it to be as accessible on our website and pushed out and over communicated, because I know that I've gotten a lot of feedback about I didn't know that happened. I didn't know that went out. I don't know where to find that. So I did I did drive them crazy today, just asking for that. If should there be a spike, when we go back to school a month in, what are the parameters? Parents need to understand what those parameters are ahead of time as they are getting ready to make enrollment decisions, registration decisions in or out of the public school system. But we owe them all of that information up front and communicated very, very well.
Will do. With the caveat that we know that the guidance, of course,
Could change any day.
any minute.
Any minute of any hour of any day, and
Yes,
sometimes
so-
all of them.
Yep.
And you guys have done a phenomenal job of pivoting and making sure that you get that information out. And we'll support you in any way we can.
All right, thank you. Information, item 7.6, discussion of face mask guidelines for the 21-22 school year. I'm excited to report that every school and department across the district is busy planning for the return to school next month, which, as I said earlier, will be 5 days, full days per week. Just this weekend, we received guidance from the 21-22 school year from the Illinois State Board of Education, which is based on the health and safety recommendations from CDC adopted by the Illinois Department of Public Health. This information is important for us to have and to review as we develop and finalize our plans and procedures. I am pleased that the information released by the State Board supports the school district's local control and discretion in regards to COVID-19 mitigation measures. My recommendation to the Board of Education is that the district not mandate masks be worn. But rather to follow the CDC guidance that recommends masks for unvaccinated individuals. The only exception is while traveling on a bus, since that requirement is conveyed in the CDC order, which calls for all passengers, students, and adults to wear a mask while traveling on a bus. So my recommendation is based on the low community rates of COVID-19, a large percentage of our population being fully vaccinated, vaccinations available to those who are most at risk, testing readily available throughout our community, and the presence of cleaning and sanitization supplies in all of our classrooms throughout our buildings. We will continue social distancing between individuals to the extent possible in all spaces, along with reporting the tracing all cases of COVID-19 following quarantine guidance from IDPH and the Kendall County Health Department. As your superintendent, I believe in the importance of fairness in the experience of all students in school, so that it is equitable and mirrors their experience and opportunities outside of school. Our district's detailed plan this fall will be shared with the parents, staff, and community as those components are finalized. I provided the board with my recommendation, along with the recent community metrics and all the documents I've received from the state superintendent. It is now the Board of Education's opportunity to discuss this topic and later this evening take the action to determine how our district will approach masks in schools. So Dr. Marino, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Item 8, action items, item 8.1. Can I get a motion for the approval of bills for payment?
I make a motion to authorize the payment of bills in the amount of $3,941,479.36 as presented.
Before I second, can we clarify that nobody wanted to have a discussion on 7.6?
Does anyone want to have a discussion on that item?
Sorry.
I'm good.
Well, I had one statement that I wanted to ask, and it pairs with the return to in-person instruction. And I just want to make a point of clarification, or not point of clarification. In the return to school plan that we're going to present, and given the recommendation that is being made, if for some reason, based on the criteria that you have specified for why we selected to go optional with mask, if for some reason the impact of that decision starts to take a turn, will the guidance for in-person learning be very specific in regards to the markers and the milestones, that if these things happen, we will then regress back to either mandating masks and then progressing or digressing in the opposite direction. Will that be clear so that not only everyone in the community will know ahead of time that we're doing this with the fact that, you know, as Dr. Sparlin stated, you know, these are the reasons why I'm making this recommendation, but if these factors change, then we're going to respond accordingly. Will that be also outlined in the...
Eugene, that was my exact communication to Dr. Sparlin today, was that I feel like this is the cart before the horse. Like, we're approving something before we have the plan, the full plan. So, and Dr. Sparlin said he's meeting with the health officials this
Wednesday, yes, correct.
Wednesday, to understand what those numbers are. But I had the same confusion, to be honest.
Yes, so Eugene, to answer your question, if we saw differentiation or spikes or different things happening, as I had mentioned in some of my comments earlier, that we will, if we have to revisit this, we would revisit it. It's important for, you know, for families to ensure that they're not sending their kids, when, you know, when they're not sending when their kids are not feeling well or showing any of the signs or symptoms of COVID, to keep them home. And we will continue to hope that students get vaccinated. I think that is the CDC's recommendation, and we also understand that it's a personal choice for parents and students to get that vaccination. But we will pivot if needed, if those on the metrics if they change.
So I'm just one last comment. One step further is not that we went, and I hope that it doesn't, because a lot of people were impacted. But I'm just saying that since we now have forethought of what happens if it does, can we create a plan now so that when,
That's what I was saying.
if it happens, then we know exactly how we're going to respond, and we don't have to come back and have a conversation about it, but the
Not a
district
surprise
is ready.
anymore.
Yeah, it's not a surprise. And so that the district will be ready with some, you know, based on prior learnings over the past 18 months, we at least have something in place. And of course we can, you know, just, manipulate the previous plans based on what we know now, but I don't want us to have to come back to talk about the plan that we will make, unfortunately, if it was to happen.
Yeah, I know. So I believe that's some of the conversation for Wednesday with the other Kendall County superintendents.
Okay, perfect.
And I would imagine that, being that I think everybody here has now been through a pandemic, we've got a little bit more experience in what those metrics need to be and what those metrics mean, frankly, in the community. Does it just mean that 500 extra people went and got tested, and that's why the numbers look higher or lower, this, that, the other? Or is it something different? So I guess my concern is that, you know, this has been such a polarizing issue. I think it was just over a year ago we had our very first board meeting where masks were being used, and that was at our board retreat last year. And at that time, the guidelines were just becoming clear that they were required in every school building. And I have to be honest with you, since the first moment that happened, I cannot believe the antagonism over a piece of cloth. It's fascinating to me because it crosses over whether it makes sense to wear it, whether it works, whether this, that, the other. But it also is interesting to me that it has consumed our community to the divisiveness that we will then bully other children, or bully the children of friends, or bully their parents, or bully board members, or bully anybody over their personal choices on what health precautions they want to take. So what I would like to caution and recommend to all of our students, to all of our staff as we come forward is, you know what, just let everyone make their own choices. That's the point of having freedom. You do you. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask, but let's not be cautionary to the children that do or don't wear them, and let's just let our lives return to education.
And one last point.
And while I appreciate that, Lori, there is an entire grade level of students that cannot be vaccinated, our elementary kids. Yeah. And I try very hard not to bring my own situation into things, but I have a 9-year-old who I won't vaccinate for a long time until I understand, what the ramifications are. And I think it's very important that we understand that those staff members are around those students that can't be vaccinated, and they go home and they have family members at home and so forth. So it's hard to say, no for this group and yes for this group. So it's very tough to give an answer for all these grade levels. That's where I'm struggling.
I can totally respect that, because that is an entirely different set of circumstances than I would find myself in.
Right, junior
and I
high or
appreciate,
high school.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you bring that viewpoint in, because it's very valid. And I wish I had an answer to that too. I think for me, the only thing that makes me think about it differently now than I would have a year ago is the knowledge, is that we have this year behind us and that we have more options. And a year ago, if I remember right, we were still pretty darn sure that it could live on this mouse for a couple weeks. And we were really sure that we should just not touch anything.
Yeah, we
and
were washing our mail.
Right, washing the mail. Oh my God.
I just
our
want to
groceries.
caution that we.
Right, I think everybody here is going to tell the best, pandemic stories forever. But in any event, I do want to say, though, that I appreciate your opinions, and I appreciate that they differ from mine, and I appreciate that we can have this respectful conversation.
Again.
Same.
But my last comment, I'm sorry, was that it wasn't even about the mask. It's about all the other mitigation efforts that we're actually taking, and I don't want us. Yeah, sorry. It's about all the other mitigation efforts that we're taking, and I don't want us to minimize those or neglect to do those, as well as, if the recommendation is to make a mask optional, but I don't want us to neglect all of the other things that are still necessary in order to make sure that our kids at all levels are safe.
That's, Eugene, that's a very good point. Those layered mitigation strategies need to stay in place. This is one strategy that we are taking off the table, and that is also following the regulations. So, the increased ventilation, symptom reporting, exposure, exclusion, frequent hand washing, sanitizing.
3 feet distance.
3 feet distances, exactly. All those types of mitigation strategies we will continue to do and continue to emphasize and enforce.
Got it.
And then I think just a proactive plan for what to do when things, or hopefully if things change.
I would also like to pay particular maybe attention to the kids who are wearing masks for a variety of reasons. Given
All right.
I would just like everyone to be sure and to feel safe and respected at school.
And I'd also like to remind parents to encourage your children to wear them. If they're not vaccinated, if you should make that choice for your family. That's a good piece of advice, but it's one that your family needs to work on what they believe about that.
Okay, are we ready to move on?
Thank you.
All right. 8.0 action items, 8.1 approval of bills for payment. Can I get a motion for the approval of bills for payment?
Yes. I make a motion to authorize the payment of bills in the amount of $3,941,479.36 as presented.
Second.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Dr. Marino,
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Mrs. Simulton.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Can I get a motion for 8.2 approval of face mask guidelines for 2021-2022?
I make a motion to approve the face mask guidelines for the 2021-22 school year as discussed.
Second.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Mrs. Simulton,
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood,
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson,
I'm abstaining.
Dr. Marino.
Aye. Motion passes 6-1? 601. Thank you. Eight 8.3, can I get a motion for the approval of high school graduation requirements?
I make a motion to approve the proposed high school graduation requirements as presented.
Second.
Second.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mrs. Simulton,
Aye.
Dr. Marino,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. 8.4, can I get a motion for the approval of Envision 308?
I make a motion to approve the Envision 308 plan as presented.
Second.
Mr. Gatewood,
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Dr. Marino,
Aye.
Mrs. Simulton,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Yay.
8.5, can I get a motion for the approval of building administrator contracts?
I make a motion to approve the building administrator contracts as presented.
Second.
Mrs. Simulton,
Aye.
Dr. Marino,
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. 8.6, can I get a motion for the approval of district administration contracts?
I make a motion to approve the district administrator contracts as presented.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Gatewood,
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Nope.
Dr. Marino,
Aye.
Mrs. Simulton,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-1. 8.7, can I get a motion for the approval of personnel report?
I make a motion to approve the personnel report as presented.
Second.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson,
Aye.
Dr. Marino,
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Mrs. Simulton.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Make a motion for it?
Just say it as it is. Or the grievance.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. 8.8, can I get a motion for the potential action arising out of closed session?
I make a motion to affirm Dr. Sparlin's May 17th, 2021 uniform grievance decision.
Second.
Mrs. Doyle,
Aye.
Mrs. Swanson,
Aye.
Mrs. Croner,
Aye.
Mrs. Simulton,
Aye.
Mr. Gatewood,
Aye.
Mrs. Johnson,
Aye.
Dr. Marino.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
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 Aye.